very interactive. Please jump in and ask questions. Last thing I want to do is just talk at you guys. So I'm Cliff Brown. I'm the president and CEO of Woodborn Holdings, which is a family of companies which includes Woodborn Partners, which is development consulting arm, Woodborn Property Management, which is our property management arm, Woodborn Capital, our fundraising arm, and Woodborn Investments, which is our asset management arm. We primarily invest in 5 neighborhoods in the city of Detroit, and we're at about $150 million in development in Detroit's neighborhoods. So that includes Brush Park, Southwest, the Villages, Jefferson Chalmers, and Lafayette Park. We also have active development or pre-development going on in Columbus, Ohio. So we're building a tower in downtown Columbus, Ohio. We're also doing some neighborhood development in Columbus. And then in our consulting work, we're primarily consulting for capital impact partners for the Equitable Development Initiative. We're really trying to, like, our focus and our passion outside of development and outside of building lives, communities, and wealth is really the creation of more developers of color and women in development. We really want to serve underserved populations that have not been exposed or have not had the opportunities in development along the entire realm. And so anybody who joins our team is an understanding that at least 30% of your time is focused on bringing the next group up, and it's primarily going to be from those populations. We are super excited to have you here. So before I tell you guys about Brooke, we have an ongoing and very special partnership with Brother Sachse, as well as Sachse Construction. We did the Scott together, and since then we have been tied together at the hip, and I'm extremely grateful for this team. So I'm going to ask the people from the Sachse Construction team just to very quickly introduce yourself. I'm going to have Bobby, who's here from my team, have him introduce himself, and then Dave is going to tell you a little bit about Sachse. So we'll start with you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jill Brock, and I'm the Vice President of Engagement at Sachse Construction, and I am responsible for all of the programming and engagement strategies for the Detroit community, Sachse's clients, Sachse's team members. So it's nice to meet you all.
Jim Geely, Senior Project Manager with Sachse, but I basically oversee anything that's got a residential component for the company.
Bobby Lewis with Woodborn Partners. Really proud to be a part of this experiment that Cliff is embarking on, hoping to be one of the success stories.
Xavier Cornelius, Project Manager, Sachse Construction.
Dave Russell, Superintendent here on site, Sachse Construction. Just real quick on us, if you guys don't know who we are, we're here in the city, we're in Detroit. We've got kind of 2 sides to our company. Half of our group is here locally in Metro Detroit. We call that our commercial side. And we've got a retail side that's in all 50 states. And they're building out stores, restaurants, anything that basically sells something. So 2 distinct sides to the company, and we're glad to be part of the commercial side, and we do a lot of projects like this.
So we are super excited to have you all out here at the Brooke. So the Brooke is a 78-unit mixed-use, mixed-income development. It'll include about 2,000 square feet of retail.
Yep.
We have about 2,000 square feet of retail. Along the back, we'll have about 24 parking spaces, of which it'll provide 8 EV charging stations. We named the building the Brooke after my daughter. And conceptually, the thought was, again, we're in 5 neighborhoods. We understand how to do work in neighborhoods. We also understand that part of our mission is not just to give word of mouth to diversity and development. The fact of the matter is, I'm not the same as Todd Sachse or the Roxbury Group, and so my approach is going to be different. And my approach is going to be informed by who and what I am. And so we try to be intentional about the work that we do. So when we go into a neighborhood, we're very thoughtful about what we name the building, how do we appreciate the culture that we're in without appropriating that culture. And what we found is we really struggled in this neighborhood because I'm not from this neighborhood. My background is different from this neighborhood. So as opposed to finding something from the neighborhood to name the building after, I wanted to name it after something that was very close to my heart as a sign of commitment and honor to the neighborhood. I'm not going to name something after my child who at the point in time had been through 2 ACL surgeries and said, hey, I'm going to name this after somebody who I'm extremely close with, and I'm going to disrespect it or disrespect the neighborhood in which it exists. And so, we don't always do a perfect job in terms of our community engagement, but we try to be as honest and authentic as possible in the work that we do. And so again, a perfect example is We talk about authenticity and community engagement. And then Rico Razzo, who some of you all know, approached me and said, man, that's great, you're intentional about diversity. Is your communication bilingual? And my feelings were hurt, right? Like, the fact of the matter, it wasn't. But we all know that in development, if you want to get anywhere, humility is super important. And so we humbled ourselves and we went back and we talked to Lily, we talked to the team at Centennial, we talked to the team at Pink Teddy. And from that, you know, we did a retail survey with our partners at Centennial who've been, they're doing La Jolla. And so I called them our partners because as we've been building this building, they have been wonderful in their communication and working with us to try to make this right. With the SDBA to try to make sure we get this right. And so we worked with Pink Teddy, and so now, not only did we do a retail survey together that was bilingual, but if you go to thebrookedetroit.com and you look at our website, you'll see it's also bilingual. And so, and our thought is not just, hey, we don't want to just be bilingual because we're in this neighborhood. We want people to feel comfortable across our entire portfolio. So we're piloting what we're doing here to see how do we, you know, what can we use and how do we use it in the rest of our portfolio, because we don't want to come into quote unquote Mexicantown and do something and say, hey, you're welcome to live in our building in Mexicantown, but if you go to the Scott or you go to the Cove, you're not welcome there, right? The thought is that you're welcome in any of our buildings and we want you. You're also going to find that with our staff. We work very hard to make sure that our staff comes from this neighborhood, and again, not just our staff here, but our staff across our portfolio. So what you'll see here, and again, please jump in with any questions that you have. I know there's always questions about the capital stack, and I'll answer any question you have. I've got nothing to hide. The only reason I won't just go completely off of memory is, so this capital stack was extremely complicated. We got this site based off of a request for qualification from the city in 2018. We started in 2019, and right before COVID, we got the numbers back and we were $5 million over budget. And so we have just crawled and scraped, and the entire time, Gensel, who is our architect, and Saxy and SME, who have served in numerous hats on this job, have stuck with us, right? Even to the point where it was like, guys, we know we owe you a payment, but we're a little bit late. We're trying to make this work. They've stuck with us. They've helped us to find solutions. We actually took out a chunk of the building, but we got it done. So we take great pride. Capital stack ended up having 12 layers in the sources. That's not including any abatements. That's not including brownfield tip. That is just, you know, senior debt. That's CRP dollars. That's a brownfield grant. That's a brownfield loan. That's an Invest Detroit. On the S&F side, that's a community engagement grant from Invest Detroit. That's a balance sheet loan from Invest Detroit. And again, I can provide you any detail that you want. Again, we have nothing to hide. We're extremely proud and excited about the work that we're doing. What you'll see here are two different images of the building. So along Bagley and 16th, you'll see that we have a brick front. And again, you guys are all in the development space, so community doesn't feel that, truly understand this, but you guys understand value engineering, right? And so the back of the building is going to be siding. But again, what we don't want to do is, because this is the side that primarily faces the neighborhood, where this is the side that introduces you to the neighborhood, we didn't want to make it seem like a movie set, right? Where you're like, oh, it's super cool on the front, and then they cheaped out on the back end. So we try to be very thoughtful about what we're doing on the back side. And so you'll see as we walk through the building, in the back, there'll be a 2-story terrace. We'll show movies off the back. The space that we're standing in right now is the lobby/lounge. So that steel structure right there will be the entrance. You'll walk in, and as you walk into that side, you'll have offices. You'll have a business center that will be open, not just for our residents, but for community organizations. We do ask that they make reservations. It'll be completely free. We're just cognizant of the fact that people live here. We don't want to have people walking in and out, but we'll also have the space out back that'll primarily be for our private residences, but we'll identify facilities when we can open it up for the community, and we're extremely proud of it. We call it the outdoor living room, and so it'll have barbecue pits, it'll have fire pits. Like I said, you'll have EV stations along the back. We are working with the Community Foundation so that this wall right here, which is owned by Verizon, will actually become a mural, and it'll actually be a mural on both sides. Again, it's not about just our development, it's about what we can do for the community. Appreciate Verizon, very thankful for their working with us, but let's be honest, that's an ugly building. And it's not just about, is it ugly for our residents, it's about how do we impact the larger neighborhood. So in the front of the building, right along here, any of you who, it certainly will not be the same, but any of you, the experience we wanted to be similar, that anybody who's been on the second floor at the Scott, and you're kind of inside and on that second floor and you look out and it's really nice on the outside where there's an indoor-outdoor experience. And so that's the same feel we wanted out front here. Again, extremely different. You don't have a pool, you don't have anything, but there'll be a seating area, there'll be music both on the inside, outside. Why don't we go to the next one? So the building is named after my daughter, and so some of you have heard this story. And so my son came to me, and excuse my language, he was pissed. He's like, how do you name the building after your daughter? And so what we did is we created CJ's Lounge, which is where you guys are sitting. And I explained to him we couldn't name the building after him because we share a name. And so my son was super excited. We named the lounge after him, and then he came back to me and said, I need naming rights fees. 12-year-old Brooke. And then he came back a year later and said, I'll give you the naming rights fees, but I want to put a vending machine in the building, and all the profits are mine. So he's already thinking about being a developer. And so we're extremely proud of CJ's Lounge. So this wall right here will be this wall. Here, again, we'll have a mural. All the muralists that we're doing, we're going to use are from the neighborhood. And the thought is again, how do you feel authentic without appropriating? And so how do we do it in a way that really plays up the work that we're doing? Our interior designer is from Studio BB, is Brittany Walker. I think she does an amazing job. Again, we worked with her in the past at the Scott, and we're really excited about what she's proposed. So one of the things that, again, you know, how do you do things that are fresh? And you can't really tell from here, but the brick that we're using very much speaks to the culture of the people who are in this neighborhood. And so we try to have touches that, again, are reflective of what's here without appropriating what is here. We're extremely excited about the work. You'll see that this will actually also be a game room. So we'll have a pool table as well as a ping pong table. There'll be places for people to congregate and to hang out. Why don't we go to the next one? Thank you. And this is a view of what one of our units will look like. So we have studios, we have 1 bedrooms, and we have 2 bedrooms. 20% of our units are at 80% AMI. I don't call those affordable because the majority of our city is at 60% AMI. So it seems offensive to call those affordable. We like to say rent restricted, but 20% of our units will be rent restricted, and we're really proud of the work that we have done and that we're doing. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you all have before we go into it. So, you know, we'll have staff there will also be able to be remotely shut off, so we'll be able to track how long that they are on and make sure that they're not just left on and don't leave everybody at risk to damage. The other
Because then
reason
you got, you know, someone leaves it
Absolutely.
on and walks away, and some 5-year-old walks up, and all of a sudden you're being sued.
Yeah,
someone's getting
and
hurt.
some of it
And
is
someone's getting hurt. And that's right.
Right.
When you mentioned fire pits, I said, oh boy, it's a landlord.
and as somebody who's a parent, right? Some of it is personal, right? Personal responsibility. So
Right.
we do the best that we can, right? And
Right.
and we do manage our own team. We look at property management because it's not always a winning proposition in terms of financially. We look at it as our Apple store. So that is our primary place where we touch our residents, right?
What
so
store?
as the Apple store, right? In general, at least it was a point in time you walk in the Apple store and the thought was you should have an amazing experience, and it is. Whatever you need, we can figure out a way to get it done, right? We may have to have a conversation later about price, but how do we create an amazing experience for our residents?
Thank you.
What other questions do we have?
Yeah, but can you speak to your sort of unit makeup between studios, 2 bedrooms, I'm assuming, and sort of how did you, what was the thinking behind that distribution in those unit types?
So I can tell you for sure, we only have 3 2-bedrooms. Do you know how many studios do we have?
I don't know the
Just because you guys
breakdown of
look at
studios and
it
one-beds.
right away. I would say it's probably about half and half, maybe skewed a little bit more towards 1 bedroom. So our general thought process is our units, you're gonna find our units are a little bit smaller than the average unit, but you're gonna find that the ceilings are a little bit higher. And you're also gonna find that we don't differentiate our affordable from our market rate. They're gonna be the exact same. And where we have figured out a way to get space out of our units and still be efficient is we just basically eliminated dining room. We found that most people do not use a dining room, and so we're gonna have peninsulas in some of our units where people can sit, but we for the most part, eliminated dining room.
What's the rough or average size of those units?
What do you say?
It's like 700 feet.
700 feet. And those are actually, like, you're gonna find, like, I chuckle because I'm like, these units are too big, right? Like, in terms of making things work nowadays, we think that we spend a lot of time, and I'm grateful to Jim, who also used to do single family homes and has just done, as young as he is, he's still done a ton of housing across the country. And so we spent a lot of time on our floor plans, and really we design our buildings from the inside out. So even in terms of this floor plan, while we're excited about it, it's somewhat dated to what we're doing, because as we move now, we're closer to about 600 square feet for a 1 bedroom and 450 to 500 square feet for a studio. But we found a way so that if, again, you won't see it reflected here, but as we progress with the code 2, with what we're doing in Columbus, you'll find that essentially it's a straight line from your bedroom through your closet, because we do all walk-in closets, to the bathroom, right? And so essentially one side of the unit is the residential side where you can entertain, the other side is the side where you sleep and you have private interaction. And we've just found that more than the size of the unit, the floor plan is everything.
So,
Well-
another question.
Yeah.
So you said when you did, not on apartment, so you did when construction, so when you said when you had that $5 million gap,
Yep,
you gave up a chunk.
yeah.
What was the chunk?
So we took a chunk off the building off of that side, so we're close to Michigan Central.
Okay.
And so we took a chunk of the building off there. The other thing that we found is that we had like 24 different floor plans, which is crazy for 78 units. And so we stacked it, right? Some of the other lessons that we learned, and like some of these things are just painful, they're a reality, right? Like I said, I mentioned the floor plans that we've since revised the floor plans. You also realize that while we have a very cute, a really cool view of Michigan Central, if you're in the terrace, that side of the building has no windows. And so the thought is, Ford is spending $1 billion, and that side of my building has no windows. And I'm infuriated by it, right? There's nothing I can do about it. We've looked now and said, how do we change it? It's just a miss, and it happens, right? And so one of the lessons learned is we don't have windows over there. The other lesson learned is be careful designing in the field, because right now I'm coming back to my team, I'm like, Saxy, can we put windows in there? And you'll see as we walk through the hallway, I'm like, can those doors be windows doors? And it's just too expensive when you start getting in the field and try to design. One of the major lessons that Todd has said, because Todd is not just a partner to us in a lot of deals, Todd is also a mentor. And so one of the biggest lessons that Todd has taught me is, man, when you get out in the field and you start doing this, it starts to get very expensive, right? At some point, you study why you're doing what you're doing, understand why you're doing what you're doing, and sometimes you just got to eat a mistake, right? Unless it gets you more rent, and that more rent is going to offset the additional cost, is the question we always ask, is the juice worth the squeeze? So another example, you'll notice here that the ceilings are extremely high, right? And so I'm like, man, can we expose more ceilings? What's $10,000 on this first floor to expose more ceilings? And I talked to my team, and they're like, let's absolutely not doing it. We're not going to get, we did the math, and we're like, we can get $100 more per unit in rent, then let's do it. Well, it doesn't make sense, right? We can spend that on the common area space. And so the last lesson that I'll share with you that I've learned and that I abide by is that I don't, during the design phase, I don't do anything without already having my contractor on board. I know some people like to bid the work out, and I certainly understand that and I respect that. We have a very close relationship with Saxon. I know I'm going to get the best pricing, and so I involved them from the very beginning. We have our property management team involved from the very beginning, and then we have our architects and our property management team follow along as it gets out in the field, right? So that I don't want people in the field pointing fingers at each other. I'm able to turn to my contractor or to my property management team when they're complaining about something in the field. I can say, look, you were there when we did page turns. Why the hell didn't you say something then? Right? And so we just believe everybody has decision rights, everybody has fair evaluation, and everybody has adequate compensation. And if we can keep those three things aligned, things typically go well.
When do you hope to open? Do you have your retailers lined up, and when are you taking reservations for things?
So when we expect to open and when we hope to open is different. So I expect to open in February 2024. Zach is going to tell you that we're planning to open in April 2024. And typically the contractor is right. So we're looking at closer to April. I'm trying to push the team to get to February, but it'll probably be late April, early May. And what was your
your retail tenants, do you have anyone lined up yet?
No, we have not. And so it's funny, again, if I can share, like, what we're planning to do is use the same broker as La Jolla. Again, lesson learned is like, Like, this is not a competition, right? Like, we're a team, a rising tide raises all boats. So it's not just, hey, let's do a retail survey to figure out what retailers make the most sense there. It's like, hey, we did a retail survey together. Does it make sense to use the same broker so that it's not a competition? It's not like, hey, if their, you know, if their broker is showing them something over there that we're missing out. No, this is a team, and ultimately the goal is for the neighborhood, right? And so there should be some kind of communication. So we're still working through who our broker is, but we do have the retail survey, and so we have a good feel for what makes sense in the space. And we don't have the ability to do a restaurant space. We don't have any, and we don't have a bridge trap.
So what would make sense for that retail?
So you potentially, an example would be like, I think the number one thing is like a coffee shop, right? So you could do a coffee shop. We may not do a coffee shop because, again, we also want to be sensitive to the work that Ray Lozano is doing down the street. And so, you know, the goal will be to coordinate with everybody in the neighborhood and identify, hey, based on the stuff that was in this retail survey, based on what's happening in La Jolla, based on what's happening throughout this neighborhood, it's not about, hey, who can get there first. It is, let's have a comprehensive strategy for retail.
What's your expected
On the retail space, I think we're at about $20 per square foot. We may be at 22, but I think that's because we're moving to more of a gross model than a triple net model. Just because what we're finding, again, what we typically do with our retail spaces is we typically go smaller, and it's typically a newer tenant who's just figuring out. Now, what we do is we say to the community, anybody who's looking to lease in that retail space, we say our underwriting standards are our underwriting standards. You can't change what our underwriting standards are, but we do our best to communicate that opportunity as early as possible and connect people who are interested with the appropriate resources so they can meet our underwriting standards, whether it's a Motor City Match or Corktown retail. And so what we are starting to find is gross makes more sense because especially when you have newer tenants, like they sign up, everything is great, and then you go and you do an audit and you say, look, you owe me more money for the year when you have a triple net, and it blows them out of the water. So the growth really works much better.
What considerations went into the ADA component? What were some of those challenges?
So we ultimately default completely to our architect in terms of, hey, what is the zoning required? You know, how can we make it so that, you know, I had two elderly parents, one of which had some health challenges, and so I'm sensitive to the fact of, hey, is there anything else we can do in any of the other units so that if those ADA units are wrong, what can we do? But ultimately, we start always from the place of, like, when you guys see me, I'm always dressed the same. I've always done the same thing because I just believe in telling the truth. And it seems silly, but if you see me, whether I'm talking to my banker, which I should have mentioned Capital Impact, who is our senior lender on this deal, and frankly, who really rescued us. We had I'm going to come back to the question you asked, but I should mention in that 5-year period, we finally got to a pace where we were ready to close. We had been working with the lender for probably a year and a half, and our lender came back and said, I just can't get there with you. And we called up Capital Impact, and within 2 weeks, they came back and they said, we'll do it with you. And so I can't speak highly enough of Capital Impact, Invest Detroit, any of our funders. But what our starting point is typically is, what is the base that we can do? It's so hard to get development off the ground in Detroit. Like, the reason I was mentioning what I wear is because I just go into the neighborhood and I tell the truth. And the truth, and I say it to you, I'll say it to anybody in the neighborhood. My number one responsibility, as much as I love this neighborhood, as much as we're about building lives, communities, and wealth, my primary responsibility is not to lose my house. That is just a fact of the matter. And like, we don't often talk honestly enough about what our motivations are, because ultimately that's what's going to drive our decisions, right? And so if I'm trying not to lose my house, I have to start with what is the minimum we can do, right? Which is minimum number of ADA units that are required and the minimum amount of affordability. And part of that 2 or 3 years we were working, we were at 60% AMI in some of these units, and we were trying to go lower. We just couldn't make it work. What other questions do we have?
Did you guys study different kind of construction alternatives just based on plain margins?
We did. We looked at a ton of them, and again, that was the advantage of having Saxy there with us, was that we played with a million different alternatives. We played with what we could do. At some point, steel was gone. At some point, we had different iterations of the building. We found that this is what made the most sense.
Did you play with the program at all? I mean, did that move around as you were trying to find that sweet spot to make it pencil?
We absolutely did.
Like the retail up front and that kind of stuff. But obviously, it's residential driven.
Yeah, we did play with how much retail. We played with the fact of, you know, we looked at like, could this, for example, could this space be like a Capital One Cafe, where it serves the community, but it also serves our residents. And so we played with the mix, and we ultimately landed on what we thought was the most efficient way to work with us. You're always going to be wrong, right? But
What about parking? How does the parking?
so we have 24 spaces of parking, and then all of our other parking will be at that parking garage that is right across the bridge. And so one thing is, again, it's about creating an amazing experience for our residents. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have a loading zone in front of our building in case they have trash. And then one of the things we're going to be working with Ford, as well as, because they own that parking garage with some private parties, is how do we make sure that that is well lit? How do we make sure that our residents can make it safe if they have to park over there? Because we realize that it's a challenge to our residents. And we're also looking at, frankly, just what other opportunities do we have for parking closer here. But we looked at one point at, because this thing's built on a hill, could we park under the building? And it was cost prohibitive.
Was the city easy to work with along those lines in terms of being those parking?
Yeah, the city has been amazing. The city has really worked with us in trying to make this thing work, and we all know, it can go either way, and they've been phenomenal partners.
So how many apartments do you have?
So we have 78 apartments.
78 apartments.
And so we have 24 spaces here, and then we have spaces, and we have, I want to say 60 spaces in that parking deck, and then we're in negotiations with other parties on where we can park. And then we're also going to be very, very cognizant and very careful about where people park in the neighborhood with their guests, because the last thing we want is people like parking over at Honeybee, like that's just not cool, right? Or parking at Mexican Village. So unless we have some kind of parking agreement with either Honeybee or Mexican Village, like we make it known to our residents, like our expectation is you don't park there. If you do park there, we've got to have a conversation about your lease. You had a question?
Yeah, I was curious about the project amenities. You mentioned a couple outdoor space and then in-unit amenities as well.
So, and anything I can't think of off the top of my head, but we do have in-unit washers and dryers. Like I said, we'll have a business center for the residents. We'll have the outdoor terrace. We'll have this. Right here will be the fitness room. What else do we have that I can't think of? We have the dog park. We'll have a dog park out back. Trying to think of what else.
24-hour delivery.
What is that?
24-hour.
Yeah, we will have a package room. So yeah. Yeah, and then we'll have dry cleaning lockers. So we will have dry cleaning lockers. So if you're a resident here, you don't have to leave here to get dry cleaning. We use Huntington Cleaners, established lockers right on site. You text them and say, I want to do it. They'll give you the locker number. You put your stuff in there. They'll come and pick it up and pay for it. And then they'll come back and they say, hey, your stuff is in this locker. Here's the code. Come and grab your stuff. And we've had that experience at the Scott, and it's been phenomenal. And like I said, we'll have EV stations. The plan right now to have 2 hyper-speed and 2 6 at relatively. And the goal is that if we can find additional parking, that ultimately we will open up those EV stations to the larger community to allow them to use those.
So with the EV charging stations, are they paid per charge, or are you working with a company that is going to sponsor it for the EV charger?
So we're working with the company, and so the way it'll be is that we're getting sponsorship to have them installed, but the residents will have to pay to park there. Frankly, we'll get a small portion every time the residents use it. And so again, one of the reasons that model was used because ultimately we're going to open it up to the larger community, and so there's no way we can pay for the larger community to park there. I thought I saw a question in the back.
The question was about with your facilities, any lessons learned with the package delivery and also drop off
So it's going to seem silly, but the number one thing that we have learned, the question was, has there been any lessons learned across our entire portfolio with package drop off or food drop off? And I would say the number one thing that we've learned is don't offer things to residents and then take it away, right? And so because originally, for example, what was planned here was what we originally had at the Scott, which was a concierge station, which makes all that easier, right? But then, but when you start to cross to that, it's like, hey, look, we gotta pull that out. And so we use Luxor as our packaging system. And so, one of the lessons we learned is make sure that all of your package vendors have access to everything and they can get in and out cleanly, or you're gonna end up with stuff packed up in front. And then we're working very closely as a property management team just to make sure that communication is there. And then we have shelving built so that you don't just have stuff just dropped in the room, right? You don't wanna overfill because then, right, it hinders your configuration, but also like we learned a lesson in terms of we have a larger package room than we typically would have had because that's just the world as it exists today, right? So we're very thoughtful about the packaging. The other thing that we have is that we have various types of carts that'll be able to service the residents. And our goal ultimately, we don't have an agreement, but our goal is to do branded shopping carts with Honeybee so that, again, in terms of parking and convenience, that, you know, especially in the warmer months, you just go right across the street. You don't have to get a shopping cart. Take the shopping cart and be branded with the Brooks name as well as Honeybee. And the thought is it will go back and forth. And so, again, we'll have to be closely monitoring that so we don't end up with a bunch of Honeybee carts here. But we think that we have a better shot of making sure we don't have Honeybee carts here if we have branded shopping carts that we provide to our residents. And we will, you know, frankly, and we'll put up signs, but we'll have cameras up everywhere. And so part of the lesson that we've learned is just like, we let our residents know you're on camera, you're on camera, you're on camera. And like, while, you know, trust but verify. We trust everybody's gonna be on their best behavior, but if they're not, we got you on camera, we're gonna have to have a conversation. We wanna create an amazing experience, and part of creating an amazing experience is not just the specific residents we're talking to, but the larger community. So people have to realize you're part of a larger community, you have to be responsible and respectful. I saw another hand up there.
So what would you say is the most challenging part of this project so far?
The most challenging was just getting to pencil and then keeping it on track, right? Because there's constant change orders, there's constant pricing that comes in. The other challenge is it's not a knock at all, but when you have a larger architectural firm, like you just as a developer, you have to stay on top of everything because there's just 1,000 things a thousand minor things that are missing. And I'm a finance guy. My background is not in A&E, right? So there's just a million things where I'm like, well, if I had known that, I would have said something, but I didn't know. I rely on you to tell me this, right? So that's when we go back to 3 stepping stools, and it allows me to hold people accountable and say, this was your job. I'll give you anything you want. What I describe myself is, you know, in sports terms, not only am I the head coach and ultimately accountability lies with me, but I'm also a fullback, right? So my job is to clear everything out so the talent can do their job. The other side of that, though, is if I'm clearing everything out so the talent can do their job, the expectation is that you do your job, right? And if you don't do your job, we have to hold you accountable. We'll give you any tool you want. I'll take any bad news you have to give me. All I ask is that you tell me what you need from me to get it fixed. But ultimately, we all have a job to do. We're going to deliver things on time and on budget. We have to do our job. Everybody's expected to do their job and know what they need to do. And so holding people accountable and making sure, especially in the areas where I'm not strongest, that we have assistance is a huge deal.
Question about change orders. Were most of them at the earlier part of the project, or are you still kind of foreseeing change orders?
I wish. So again, lessons learned.
Yeah.
We've had over 100 RFIs on this project, which is ridiculous. It should never happen, right? So anybody doesn't know what an RFI is? Everybody knows. So RFI is a request for information, right? It is our contractors in the field, and they're going back to the architect and saying, this is not clear, I need more information, right? And so for all of us, it's not just on the architect, it's not just on the contractor, it's also on me, right? Lesson learned, we have to do a better job of making sure we're doing pay assurance, and we're all doing the best we can to understand and have as much detail as possible while we're designing this thing so that we go in the field, we don't have questions. A good example, and I love CHA. CHA has been an amazing architect. They're our architect on the code. And we were building the code, they put red doors. And it created an RFI because Saxon came back and they said, there are 5 million different versions of red. Which red is it? That seems silly, and I'm not saying it like to throw them under the bus. I'm just saying, like, if your background is not in construction, you'll be like, I never thought of that. Said red doors, it looked fine to me, right? But you literally want to know every single detail that you can.
Can you talk about access to the building? And then also, are you able to access the retail from the inside, or is that only from the outside?
So you will be able to access the retail from the inside, but we're also going to leave it up to retailers in terms of how fluid that access is. But there will be like a hallway that allow you, because there's a shared bathroom, and so we do have a key fob system. in general to get most doors, and then we'll also use the butterfly system at our primary entrance. So this is what we call our main entrance, and then in the back is what we call our resident entrance. And so we use the butterfly system, and then we have a key fob system. We're using two-point alarm for all of our kind of front-facing spaces, and then our back office spacing we're still figuring out, but we're probably going to use just a keypad system. We're trying to get away from just keys because keys can get messy, but we also just have to make sure we have adequate controls.
And for the units themselves?
And for the units themselves, we're using a program called Smart Rent. So we have Yale locks that are tied to Smart Rent. So Smart Rent will manage that. The other thing that we're doing that if it's unfortunate, it's a day and time. So we're going to have key fob not only on. So as you guys can see, there's going to be two entrances at each door. So you're going to keep you out of the cold. You'll be able to. That front door is going to remain open, and then you get to the second door, and that's where you have to use the butterfly system. But one of the lessons that we've learned, just unfortunately the way things have gone in life, is we have key fobs at both doors. And so the thought is that front door will be open at all times, except for in an active shooter situation. And so typically, right in the past, we've only put a key fob at the back door, but our goal is we have various points in our buildings that if we had to lock it down, we could lock it down and nobody could access. We don't want someone, like ultimately, right, these are glass doors. Somebody's going to shoot out the doors, they're going to shoot out the doors. But whatever we can do to make it safe as possible, whatever we can do to identify places where people can hold up and be safe. It's unfortunate that you have to think it this way, but that is where we are in today's society. What else we got?
Good.
Yeah.
Can you talk about sight lines? You spoke a little bit about it previously, but in terms of kind of as we outlook over this way, what level of control do you have and what are you able to?
So that's a great question. So one of the things that we do is we are regular participants with the Hubbard Richard Resident Association. You know, I've worked at Ford Land for 15 years. And so we've got a great relationship with Ford. We've got a great relationship with the city. And so one of the things that we're going to do is we're working closely with those partners and making sure, again, it's not just selfish, but we are frank that we're spending $24 million, right? And our expectation is the street, which is falling apart and it has an active sinkhole, and this site here, which is owned by the Canada Pacific, our expectation is that it'll be cleaned up. We had offered at one point in time to buy it. We'd offered at one point in time to rent it. We were looking to make this a 24 space parking lot with the park. And they turned us down, and I understand that they're worried about if somebody were to get over there and jump over the side and get on the train, and I'm like, dude, they could get over there and jump off right now and get to it. You would never know because the trees are in the way, right? But we are going to hold them accountable. And our conversation with the city, and this is just frank, one of the things we communicate to the community is like, fortunately or unfortunately, the city is going to respond quicker to us than it is to the average resident just because of what we have invested. And we've said, if you find there are other problems, use us, and we'll be your partners in it and speaking on your behalf. But the fact of the matter is, I am personally signing up for $24 million of financing. My expectation is that at a minimum, I can count on the city to make sure that that stays clean, right? And so we're going to be working with the city, we're working with, like I said, Ford Land and with Hubbard Richard Resident Association to make sure that gets cleaned up and that stays clean. And then, like we said, Rising's been amazing. They're like, hey, we don't want the building to look like that either. You want to put a mural up and you guys want to pay for it, great. Ready to tour? What other questions we got? Yeah.
Green features, green features, green energy, stormwater, that sort of thing. What do you have in the building?
So we don't have it, just to be frank again, we believe in just being frank. We don't have a whole lot of green features. A lot of that, at one point we looked at stormwater retention system. A lot of stuff, just frank. Everything that's a great idea gets beat out when you've got a $5 million gap. All right, so what we're gonna do is, we're gonna start here on the first floor. I'm gonna take you to look at the studio and a one bedroom, and then we'll work our way up there. Tell me if I say anything wrong. We're gonna work our way up to the second floor, which is where our 2-bedroom units are. You get a chance to look over at kind of the view from Michigan Central that we missed out on. All right, we ready? So this is one of our 1 bedrooms, and so to give you a feel, this area right here is the kitchen run. This is kind of the hangout space, living room. You have your bedroom here, You have your walk-in closet, and then you have your bathroom. We have minimum standards for how much space is allowable, and while we want to do as small unit as possible, we one of the things we've done is we have a playbook that we use for the minimal size for a bedroom. And again, this is where I go back. I don't want to embarrass Jim, but Jim is extremely helpful because we'll say a lot of times and it's not shy architects, I promise you not, but like a lot of times we do things and they don't have dimensions or they have furniture in there, and you're like, dude, what size is that furniture really? Like, because again, I don't see in 3D, right? And so Jim has been very helpful to say, look, this is the average size bed, this is how much walking space you need. In a bathroom, we have a minimum size for a vanity. So again, we've been very thoughtful. This was kind of the first iteration and lesson learned. As you can see, we always do walk-in closets. We do a really big size closet, but moving forward, again, our closet will be so that you could walk right through that closet and right to the bathroom. But all of the washer and dryers will be in those closets, and so like I said, we're pretty proud of this unit.
Have you thought about lofting at all? Like,
I'm sorry?
On this lower level, like lofting, you have so much vertical space. Like, have you thought about like mezzanine space or anything like that?
So we had looked at that. We had looked at maybe having the ceiling a little higher because like I love where the ceiling is. Now when we start to drop the HVAC, like everything's going to drop down. But our drywalling partners, the number that they had just was not reasonable for the change order. And so we said, look, we're perfectly fine. You'll see when we go upstairs, 10-foot ceiling height is still taller than you typically would get. Perfectly fine with that. Like, you're just not going to get enough rent to cover that change order. It's something we should have caught, frankly, on the front end. And again, one of the ideas that we're playing with our architectural partners is, can we, but there's a cost associated with that, is can we design the entire building in Revit and walk through it, on a 3D basis? We talk all this AR stuff. I'm like, why does nobody talk AR on the A&E side, where you can actually walk through the building and you can catch all of these issues on the front end before you build it, and it's much cheaper to make these changes, right? Because if I had realized, like, it's one thing when they're like, oh yeah, the ceiling before you finish is going to be whatever height. Like, it's different when you walk in here. You guys have the same thought I did. Like, for the past, I'm driving my team crazy because every time I walk in the building, I'm like, man, can't we keep these heights? But they're going to go away.
And this is all driven by the retail in the lobby. We wanted certain height in the lobby and all that sort of stuff. And because you're stacking and floors are level, this height is driven by what's over there.
Got it.
And you got to have a certain minimum height in a retail space or a mall work.
Okay.
Dave, you want to take them to let's go to the studio now?
Yeah.
One of our studio units, and so again, lessons learned. So Brooke, who's my daughter, is my assistant on this apparently, and it drives her crazy that this closet is not where the washer and dryer goes. She's like, she speaks for everybody in her gender. She's like, women like a larger closet, and she's like, dude, you're killing the closet by having the washer and dryer in that unit as opposed to here. But the advantage of having this closet here is there's really no pantry. So in addition to being kind of a coat closet, it'll allow you to put like a vacuum cleaner or a broom. But this is our studio unit. We feel really good about it. And studios always made me nervous. And then I wish I could take you into how the resident at the Co. We have one studio at the Co. And the way she outfitted it, it is the most impressive unit that I've ever built. And it's not the work we did, it's how she outfitted it. But it made me believe, like, hey, we can do studios. All right. Any questions on the studios before we head up? Then obviously this is the kitchen run. So the kitchen room will be right here, and then this will be a sitting area, and then that'll be where the bed is. One of the other things I want you to know is the size of the windows. So again, we go with smaller units, but we try to go with bigger windows and higher ceilings. So even though we don't have this ceiling height, we still will be at 10 feet. Dave, you want to take them up to the second floor?
Challenge for today. We all got to get up.
Oh, yeah. Mike would be able to lift if he said just the last.
in the car, so yes.
If you're here, I also have tickets to Vancouver, but I wonder what that's going to do. Because me and my friend just like bought them. You don't know, right? Like, when the way they came out, and I don't like it, I didn't want to be in that situation. And I'm like, oh, so I was like, yeah, like,
Sorry. So to give everybody a feel, the primary entrance is going to be here. This right here is going to be one bedroom. The far end is going to be the other bedroom. You have a smaller closet in here. But you do have a bathroom right here. And you have a bathroom right here. And then the little cubbies right there are for washer and dryer and for closets.
Kitchen right here.
And, yep, absolutely, sorry. And the kitchen run will be right here. So it actually feels bigger in a lot of ways.
The kind of the odd shape of the building, is that due to the lot size or the?
It is due to the lot size, and I think our architect wanted to be creative, but it is the lot size, and then we wanted to have some green space or outdoor space, and so doing it this way allows us to have that front door space. And so there are only 3 of these in the building, and it's just straight up. So.
Got a newbie question.
Yeah.
For second level structures and above, would it be better in the long run to have concrete floors as opposed to putting down OSB and tile and things of that nature for durability purposes? I know it's a little bit higher in
I was
cost.
just going to say, because of who you are and you're my guy and you're one of my mentees,
yes,
better is relative, right? Now, from a durability perspective, from a sound attenuation, yes. From a cost perspective, it's just a nightmare.
Got it.
Right? Again, one of the lessons learned here, one of those RFIs that came in one of the change orders was that what was originally drawn did not have adequate sound attenuation or fireproof attenuation. So we had to add extra drywall, which added extra cost to the project.
Got it.
And then what we'll do is we're going to walk down the hallway, and as we walk down the hallway, I'll let you guys, you can peek into the 1 and 2 so you can see the difference in height, and then you can just take a quick view at the end of the hallway at Michigan Central.
During snow emergencies, they can't park on the street.
Right.
Their cars would get towed. So then I would say, oh, we're going to just go back to this building. It's free.
What a location.
And you know, we got the garage. So
Yeah.
so the 2 things I want you to see, I want you to get a view, and then also I want you to see, again, the ceiling heights are still higher than you typically would have.
Is there anything prohibitive about making this a phase 2?
You're saying in terms of?
Continuing on your lot line and building, you know, like an adjacent.
So we have to have a certain amount of green space, and so we want to protect the green space. And then actually what's going to happen right here is our second stair is actually going to be an external stairwell, and then this red right here is actually a firewall. So one of the things that we looked at after the fact was, could we just make these glass doors, right? And you see like this hallway just kind of goes on forever, but it would be like $30,000 a door because of the type of glass you have to use because of fire protection. But you'll notice, like one of the misses is this back wall. There's no reason that this back wall outside of the red wood could not have had a window.
What
So
about
these units are just a miss?
What about CBA? Is there a community benefits agreement on this project?
There's not. We do not. We haven't had any projects that are that size. We're going to work with the community anyway, but we don't want to be bound by some things. We'd rather sign a private agreement with the resident. All righty, we want to head back now? Last thing, real quick.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that I thank you all for coming out. We are humbled that you would take time out of your day, especially in the crazy week that it's been with the wind and everything in the air, that you would come out today, and we're very grateful. Again, we don't take anything that we do or any relationships that we have for granted, so we're very appreciative of the team, Shannon and her team, and Cora, and all the hard work that they have done. And so with that, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Drinks are on me, so I'm going to go over to Mexican Village. Carissa's over there right now ordering some appetizers, and
we'll have a bar tab going. So please join.
All right.